Love is a flame that burneth brightest in the shadow of death. In the days of old, when the Viking kings ruled the northern seas with iron and fire, and the longships cut the waves like blades through flesh, there reigned in Denmark a mighty lord named Gram, whose hall stood upon the cliffs of Zealand, overlooking the grey and restless waters that beat eternally against the shore. Gram was a warrior of great renown, his beard streaked with silver from many battles won and lost, his eyes keen as the eagles that soared above his lands. His sons were three: Haki the bold, Hagbard the swift, and Helwin the wise, strong youths sworn to their father's honor and the glory of their house. Across the narrow sea in Norway ruled King Sigurd, fierce and proud as the mountains that ringed his fjords. His hall was built of dark timber and stone, carved with runes and dragons, and his longships raided far and wide, bringing silver and slaves to his hearth. Sigurd had a daughter named Signe, fairest of all maidens in the Northlands, with hair golden as the summer wheat that grew in the rare fertile valleys, and eyes blue as the deep fjord waters in sunlight. Her beauty was sung by skalds from hall to hall, and many princes and jarls sought her hand in marriage, offering rich dowries and alliances. But Signe's heart was quiet and deep, waiting for one who could match her spirit, not merely her father's power. Betwixt the houses of Gram and Sigurd lay an ancient and bitter feud. In a raid many years past, Sigurd's warriors had fallen upon Gram's lands, slaying his brother in battle and burning his steadings. Blood called for blood, and the kings made war upon each other without cease. Ships burning in the night upon the waves, villages laid waste with fire and sword, warriors falling in shield walls upon the beaches. The sons of Gram grew to manhood in this hatred, swearing oaths upon their swords to avenge their uncle and bring honor to their line. One summer, when the seas lay calm beneath a pale sun and the winds favored bold ventures, Hagbard sailed with his brothers Haki and Helwin to raid the Norwegian coast. Their longship, dragon-proud and swift, cut through the waves like a knife, its sails striped red and white. They sought cattle and silver, thralls and glory to weaken Sigurd's power. They came upon a hidden fjord at dusk, the cliffs rising steep and black, the water still as glass. Beaching their ship beneath an overhang of rock, they crept inland under cover of twilight, seeking Sigurd's outlying farms. Hagbard, ever the scout, parted from his brothers to range ahead, his footsteps silent upon the mossy ground. He came upon a secluded glade where a clear stream fell from the heights into a pool ringed by silver birch trees, their leaves shimmering in the moonlight. There he beheld a sight that struck his heart like Thor's own hammer. Signe and her maidens bathing in the pool, their laughter light as birdsong upon the air, their forms fair as the goddesses of old. Signe stood in the water, her golden hair loose upon her shoulders, her skin glowing in the moon's gentle light. Hagbard hid in the shadows of the birches, his breath caught, his warrior's heart seized with a love deeper than any battle rage. He watched until the maidens departed, wrapping themselves in linen and returning to the hall, then followed at distance, learning the way to Sigurd's stronghold and the name of the maiden who had ensnared him. Returning to the ship, he spake nothing of what he had seen, but his brothers marked his silence and the distant look in his eyes. They raided a farm that night, taking cattle and silver, then sailed home with the dawn wind. But Hagbard's thoughts remained fixed upon Signe, her image burning in his mind like a brand. In the autumn following, envoys came betwixt Gram and Sigurd, seeking an end to the endless war. For both kingdoms grew weary and the harvests suffered. A truce was sworn upon sacred rings, and as token of good faith, Gram sent his sons to feast at Sigurd's hall. Hagbard went willingly, though his brothers warned him of treachery. The feast was grand in Sigurd's hall, long tables laden with roast boar and salmon, mead flowing in horns carved from aurochs, skalds singing of old heroes. Fires roared in the great hearths, casting flickering light upon shields hung upon the walls. Signe sat at her father's high seat, clad in a gown of blue wool embroidered with silver threads, a torque of gold about her neck, her hair braided with pearls. When Hagbard's eyes met hers across the smoke-filled hall, love kindled betwixt them in that instant, fierce and undeniable. Later, when the guests grew heavy with mead, Hagbard slipped away and found her bower high in the tower. Disguised in a woman's cloak stolen from a servant, he entered as a wandering skald come to sing for the princess. Signe welcomed the stranger, bidding her maidens bring wine. When they slept, Hagbard cast back his hood. Signe knew him, the Danish prince from the feast, and fear warred with joy in her breast. "Thou art bold beyond reckoning," quoth she softly, "to come thus into my father's hall. Boldness is not beside the loss of thee," quoth Hagbard. "From the moment I beheld thee in the glade by the pool, my heart hath been thine alone." They spake long in whispers that night, pledging love eternal despite the feud. Hagbard gave her a ring of red gold from his arm, forged with runes of binding, and Signe gave him a lock of her golden hair bound with silk from the east. They vowed to meet again, to wed in secret if need be, defying kings and kin. But love in such times is fraught with peril. One of Signe's maidens woke and saw the stranger depart at dawn. Suspicion grew, and the maiden, fearful or jealous, betrayed the secret to Siggar. The king raged like the storm wind off the sea. "A son of Gram in my hall, courting my daughter," quoth he to his counselors. "This is treachery cloaked in truce." He set watches upon Signe's bower and laid snares for Hagbard. Yet love found paths where none seemed to be. Hagbard returned in disguises, as a harpist to sing at feasts, as a servant bearing gifts, meeting Signe in hidden corners of the garden or upon the battlements at midnight. Their passion deepened with every risk, every stolen hour. They dreamed of flight to distant lands, of a life beyond feud and father's wrath. Hagbard's brothers learned of his doings and warned him gravely. "This will bring death upon us all," quoth Haki. "Father will disown thee, Siggar will slay thee." But Hagbard would not be swayed. "I would die 1,000 deaths for her," quoth he. "She is my life." Signe, locked in her tower, sent messages by faithful maid, planning escape upon the next dark moon. But betrayal came once more. A servant overheard and ran to Siggar. The king summoned his warriors and laid a deadly ambush. Hagbard came that fateful night disguised as a woman again, harp upon his back, to sing for Signe one last time before their flight. The guards seized him at the bower door, tearing away the cloak. "The Danish traitor!" cried Siggar, drawing his sword. Hagbard fought fiercely, slaying 2 guards before numbers overwhelmed him. Bound with chains, he was cast into the dungeon beneath the hall, awaiting the gallows at dawn. Signe, hearing the commotion, knew her love was taken. Her heart turned to ice, then to fire. The end was near. "If this tale of forbidden passion and ancient enmity hath kindled a fire in thy heart, the love that defeateth kings and blood feuds, then tarry with me yet a while in these storm-lashed northern halls. Subscribe thou gently, as one might swear a secret vow beneath the moon, and like this story if its tragic beauty hath touched thee, together we shall witness the lover's final defiance. For the rope and the flame draw ever closer. Betrayal cometh oft from those closest to the heart." Hagbard lay in the cold dungeon beneath Siggar's hall, chains upon his wrists and ankles, the stone floor damp with the breath of the earth. The air was thick with the smell of mold and old blood, the only light a faint gleam from a narrow slit high in the wall. He had fought valiantly when seized, slaying 2 guards and wounding a third, but numbers had overwhelmed him. Now he waited for dawn and the gallows, his body bruised but his spirit unbroken. Above in her tower bower, Signe paced the floor like a caged she-wolf, her golden hair unbound and falling about her shoulders. The news of Hagbard's capture had reached her like a blade to the heart. She had wept until no tears remained, then dried her eyes and turned her mind to action. Her maidens, loyal but fearful, huddled in the corner, whispering of the king's rage. Siggar had stormed into her chamber upon the betrayal, his face red as forge fire. "Thy Danish lover is taken," quoth he. "He shall hang at dawn for his treachery." Signe had fallen to her knees. "Father, mercy," quoth she. "He came not to harm but for love of me." "Love?" roared Siggar. "Love of Gram's whelp? This is insult upon insult. He shall die, and thou shalt wed a prince of my choosing." He posted guards at her door and windows, locking her in. But Signe's love was fiercer than chains. She sent her most trusted maiden to the dungeon with a message hidden in bread. "If thou deest, I die with thee." Hagbard received the message in the dark hours. reading it by the faint light. His heart swelled. He sent back word by the maiden. Tell her I die gladly if she liveth free. But if she chooseth, the maiden trembled. What meanest thou, my lady? Thou shalt see, quoth Signe. Dawn approached, grey and cold. The gallows was raised in the courtyard. A high beam upon posts, ropes swaying in the wind. The household gathered, warriors, servants, thralls, all summoned to witness justice. Sigar sat upon a high seat, his face grim. Signe was brought forth under guard, clad in a gown of white linen embroidered with gold, her hair loose and crowned with flowers as though for a wedding. Hagbard was led out in chains, his head high, his bearing proud. He wore the same tunic from the night, torn but unbowed. The crowd murmured at his handsomeness and courage. Sigar rose. For treachery and violation of truce, quoth he, thou shalt hang till dead. Hagbard looked upon Signe, their eyes meeting across the yard. Love passed betwixt them like a flame. I regret not, quoth he loudly. For love of Signe I came, and for love of her I die gladly. The executioner placed the noose about his neck. Hagbard turned to Sigar. Grant me one boon, quoth he. Let me test the rope's strength with my cloak first, that I die not by accident but by thy will. Sigar, thinking it a jest or pride, agreed. Hagbard's cloak was hung upon the rope, and the trap dropped. The cloak fell, and at that signal, agreed in secret with Signe, a great cry arose from the tower. Fire burst from Signe's bower windows, flames leaping high, smoke billowing black against the dawn. The maiden had set it alight with oil upon the tapestries and beds. Signe appeared at the window, her white gown glowing in the firelight. My love, quoth she, I come to thee. She hanged herself from the beam within, her body swinging as the flames consumed the tower. The crowd screamed in horror. Sigar leaped up, face ashen. My daughter, quoth he. But it was too late. The fire roared, the tower collapsed in sparks and timber. Signe died as Hagbard hanged, their souls departing together. Hagbard, seeing the flames and knowing her choice, smiled even as the rope tightened. We meet in Valhalla, quoth he, and breathed his last. The lovers died as one, defying king and feud. Their bodies were buried apart by Sigar's command, but legend saith flowers grew upon both graves, roots entwining beneath the earth. The tale of Hagbard and Signe became a song of tragic love, sung by skalds through the ages. Honor is a chain heavier than iron, and none break it without paying a price in blood. The dungeon beneath Sigar's hall was a place of darkness and despair, its walls slick with damp and etched with the scratches of former prisoners. Hagbard lay chained to the ring in the floor, his wrists raw from the iron, his body aching from the beating the guards had given him upon capture. Yet his spirit remained high, for love sustained him where flesh failed. In the long hours of night, he thought of Signe, her golden hair, her blue eyes, the softness of her voice in their stolen meetings. If I die, quoth he to the shadows, I die for her, and that is honor enough. Above, in her locked bower, Signe sat by the window, gazing out upon the fjord where the moon silvered the waves. Guards stood at her door, their spears gleaming in the torchlight, but her mind was with Hagbard in the depths below. She had sent her faithful maiden with messages hidden in food, and the replies came back upon scraps of bark. Fear not for me. Live and remember our love. But Signe could not live without him. Her heart, once gentle, now burned with a fierce resolve. She called her maidens to her, 3 loyal girls who had shared her secrets, and spake unto them plainly. My love is taken, quoth she, and they will hang him at dawn. If he dieth, I will not live in a world without him. The maidens wept, begging her to reconsider. Thy father the king loveth thee, quoth one. He will find thee a worthy husband. Nay, quoth Signe, no husband but Hagbard. Prepare the bower, oil the lamps, pile the tapestries and beds with dry kindling. When the signal cometh we shall act. The maidens, bound by love for their lady, obeyed though fear filled them. Dawn came cold and grey, the sky heavy with clouds. The gallows was raised in the courtyard, a high beam of oak upon sturdy posts, the rope swaying in the wind like a serpent. The household was summoned. warriors in mail, servants and thralls, even the women and children. Sigar sat upon a carved throne brought from the hall, his face stern, his counselors beside him. Hagbard was brought forth in chains, his head high, his bearing that of a prince though captive. The crowd murmured at his courage and comeliness. No fear showed in his eyes, only a quiet. The lovers' gazes met across the yard, and in that look passed all their love vows renewed, promises kept. Sigar rose. For treachery against my house and violation of truce, quoth he, voice ringing clear. Hagbard, son of Gram, thou art condemned to hang by the neck until dead. Hast thou aught to say? Hagbard stepped forward as far as the chains allowed. I regret not, quoth he loudly, that all might hear. I came not for war or spoil, but for love of thy daughter Signe, fairest in all the north. For her I would die 1,000 deaths and count them joy. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some of pity, some of anger. Signe's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled upon him. The executioner, a burly thrall with hooded face, placed the noose about Hagbard's neck. Hagbard turned to Sigar once more. Grant me one boon before I die, quoth he. Let me test the rope with my cloak first, that I die not by mishap but by thy justice. Sigar, thinking it a proud jest or a final defiance, nodded. Let it be so. Hagbard's cloak was removed and hung upon the rope in his stead. The trap was sprung, and the cloak fell harmlessly to the ground. This was the signal agreed upon in secret messages betwixt the lovers. At that moment a great cry arose from the tower. Flames burst from Signe's bower windows, leaping high with roar and crackle, black smoke billowing against the dawn sky. The maiden had poured oil upon the beds and tapestries, set torch to them with her own hand. Her loyal maidens, as pledged, joined her in the fire rather than live in a world that slew their lady's love. Signe appeared at the window, her white gown glowing in the flames like a Valkyrie. My Hagbard, quoth she, voice carrying over the chaos. I come to thee. We shall not be parted. She looped a silken cord about her neck in the beam, then leaped into the void within the bower, hanging as the fire consumed all. The crowd screamed in horror. Warriors rushed with buckets, but the tower was high and the flames fierce. Sigar leaped from his throne, face ashen. My daughter, quoth he, voice breaking. Signe. But it was too late. The bower collapsed in a shower of sparks and burning timber, the maiden's cries silenced forever. Hagbard, seeing the flames and knowing Signe's choice, smiled even as the executioner pulled the rope tight. We meet beyond the veil, quoth he softly, and gave himself to the noose. The lovers died together, Hagbard by hanging, Signe by fire and cord, their souls flying free as the smoke rose to the heavens. Sigar's warriors cut Hagbard down too late. His body hung limp, face peaceful. The king fell to his knees before the burning tower, weeping for his daughter. The feud, born of blood, ended in blood and flame. The bodies were buried in secret places by Sigar's command, lest Gram seek vengeance anew. But legend saith that upon both graves grew a tree, a linden upon Hagbard's, a hazel upon Signe's, and their branches entwined above the earth, roots joining below, that love might triumph even over death. The tale of Hagbard and Signe became a lay sung by skalds in halls throughout the north, a song of love that defieth kings and feuds, of lovers who chose death together rather than life apart. The courtyard of Sigar's hall was a scene of chaos and sorrow as the lovers' lives ended together. Hagbard's body swung gently from the gallows, his face peaceful in death, a faint smile upon his lips as though he beheld Signe waiting for him beyond the veil. The tower bower blazed like a funeral pyre, flames leaping high into the gray dawn sky, black smoke billowing thick and choking. The maidens within, loyal unto death, had joined their lady in the fire, their cries silenced as the roof collapsed in a shower of sparks and burning timber. Sigar stood frozen upon his throne, his warriors forgotten, his face drained of color. My daughter, quoth he, voice breaking like waves upon rock. He staggered forward as if to rush into the flames, but his counselors held him back. Signe, my only child. The crowd, warriors hardened by battle, servants who had known Signe from babehood, thralls who had seen her kindness, stood in stunned silence, then broke into wails and murmurs. Some fell to their knees, crossing themselves or calling upon the old gods. The feud, the hatred, the long years of blood, all seemed vain in the face of such love. Hagbard's brothers, Haki and Helwyn, had been held captive in the hall as hostages for the truce. Upon hearing the commotion, they broke free in the confusion, swords drawn. But seeing Hagbard dead and the tower in flames, they lowered their blades. "Our brother is gone," quoth Haki, voice thick. Sigar, broken by grief, nodded dumbly. No more war was fought that day. The bodies were recovered with reverence. Hagbard was cut down, his chains removed, his form washed and clad in fine raiment. Signe's remains, charred but recognizable by the golden torque about her neck, were gathered from the ashes with her maidens. Sigar commanded they be buried in secret places, lest Gram seek further vengeance. But love's legend would not be buried. The people buried Hagbard upon a high cliff overlooking the sea, wrapping him in his cloak with his sword at his side. Signe was laid in a mound upon the opposite shore, her torque and jewels with her. Yet in the spring that followed, a strange miracle occurred. Upon Hagbard's grave grew a linden tree strong and fair, its leaves heart-shaped. Upon Signe's grave sprang a hazel slender and graceful. The trees grew swiftly, their branches reaching across the water that separated the graves. In time they met and entwined, roots joining beneath the earth, leaves mingling in the wind. A living bridge of love defying separation. Skalds came from far halls to sing of it. The tale spread through Denmark and Norway. Of Hagbard the bold who loved beyond feud, of Signe the faithful who chose fire over life without him. Songs were composed, runes carved upon stones. Gram, hearing of his son's death, grieved deeply but honored the courage. He sent gifts to Sigar, silver and horses, as token that the blood debt was paid. Sigar, childless now and weary, accepted, and peace held between the houses. Years passed. The entwined trees became a place of pilgrimage. Lovers came to pledge troth beneath their branches, leaving offerings of flowers and rings. Maidens in sorrow prayed there for faithful hearts. Warriors spake of Hagbard's honor before battle. In time the legend grew richer. Some said on stormy nights the lovers' spirits walked the cliffs, hand in hand. Others told how the trees whispered their vows in the wind. The dual death, hanging and fire, became symbol of love's power to conquer even the grave. The tale of Hagbard and Signe endured through centuries, sung by firesides and in great halls, a beacon of tragic passion in the cold north. And so love triumphed, not in life but in death eternal. And thus this saga of Viking love and tragic defiance draweth to its sorrowful close, the lovers united beyond the veil, their tale woven into the very trees of the north. If these ancient halls of passion and sacrifice have left their echo in thy heart, then let our voyages through forgotten myths continue. Subscribe thou gently, as one might carve a rune upon enduring stone, and like this story if its fierce devotion hath stirred thee. Together we may yet seek more legends from the Old West, for the songs of love and honor are never ended.